Every woman deserves to feel vibrant, safe, loved, and feel her power. The Woman's Vibrancy Code podcast is here for a potent use of your time. We will cover energy, hormones, and libido with episodes that also dive into entrepreneurship, money mindset, feminine power, and much, much more. Introducing Maraya Brown, Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, and entrepreneur.
All right, welcome back to the Women's Vibrancy Code podcast. I am repurposing this interview with Karen O'Doherty. This interview was done fall of 2020, so you'll hear the context of being deep into the pandemic. We also live in Southern Oregon, and the fires from the Northwest had ravaged our town. We were in smoke-filled time and navigating having children at home and lots of different variations in how we were all figuring out how to work, how to live, how to parent. And Karen brings some tremendous insight in regard to how we as mothers can connect with our daughters. It is relevant to fall of 2020, and it is also relevant to today. So enjoy and see you on the other side. I today have Karen O'Doherty. She has been working for decades now, helping mothers and parents. But what we're going to be talking about today is helping mothers connect with their daughters, whether it's an adolescent or teenage daughter. And are you navigating how to support your adolescent or teenage daughter? And are you feeling the angst around how do I help her best express herself sexually and intellectually and emotionally and physically? And how do I feel connected to my daughter, whether she is 6 or 10 or 16 or beyond? You can see her website in the description. It's called Body Basics and Beyond. And it's grown into an independent program offering current puberty and adolescent education, guidance, and support for youth and their families. Karen O'Doherty runs this Body Basics and Beyond, and they offer classes, workshops, and retreats. She also does one-on-one consultation with parents virtually. So no matter where you are, if you are a mother going, I need to figure out how to connect with my daughter or how to help my daughter navigate this chapter of her life, I can't say it enough. I've worked personally with Karen, and I know many, many, many mothers that are friends of mine that just scream her praise at the top of the mountaintops. She is a retired elementary school teacher and a mother of 3 beautiful daughters who are talented young women. And it is her heartfelt belief that every girl everywhere deserves to have people in her life to show her that she can be strong. Makes me feel emotional. Beauty can mean 1,000 things. Her body's changes don't have to be scary and confusing. And she has the power within her to meet the world with compassion, intelligence, and confidence. And that she has the right to feel good about herself and her body no matter what. So Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just really grateful. We are both in the Northwest and currently displaced and in air quality that is horrendous. And so if you hear our voices shake a little bit, we have our tea and we have our water, and we are doing our best to perpetually offer up out into the world things that lift us up. And I don't know about you, Karen, but when my cars are packed for an evacuation at any point, I keep saying I'm so grateful to have purposeful activity and to be able to still pour into helping people around the world. So I'm wondering if you would just start out. I mean, I think at the beginning, what are the dynamics with young girls that you have coming up in your work over the past 6 months to a year? I mean, there's so much that's changed in light of COVID and different definitions of how we school and now fires. I'm wondering if you've seen anything shift in how you are supporting families, and if you have any words of wisdom for the parents out that are just going, oh my gosh, how do I navigate this?
Yeah, 6 months is like 20 years ago. I mean, things have changed so dramatically in our world that has really given us pause, literally physical pause, in considering what is really important. And so what have I seen that has changed? Well, Of course, the biggest thing, and it's more than 6 months ago, of course, is technology in girls' lives. That's a whole other conversation. That's probably the biggest one that I've seen that affected relationships, as well as, kids' relationships with themselves, with their friends, with their families. That's a whole management that needs to take place for sure. Since COVID, it's been interesting because I've been speaking with my therapist friends and some of my friends who are now grandparents and such. Something interesting happened when schools closed last spring. Once the shock of the disconnect and what was happening to our world and the loss of friends and things started to settle down, things really shifted for girls in being home with their families. We saw less anxiety, actually. We saw reconnection with family, doing puzzles, playing games, getting creative, having a relationship with boredom again. There are some really positive things that were happening for girls this summer and before the angst of school starting kicked in. There was less stress and less anxiety having kids not be in school and being centered in the home unit. There were bumps for sure and challenges, but I've never seen that before. I've never seen this dip in the community of youth that I work with, where when I say dip, it's a dip of calmness and groundedness and centeredness. I literally, some of the moms I was coaching with were like, I feel like I've got my kid back. That's really what I've noticed. Now we're in a crisis mode now, which is very different. Of course, when school started, the elevation of stress rose again, right? Am I going to be in a pod? Am I going to be going to school face to face? Am I going to be on Zoom for 6 hours? That then elevated the anxiety level. But that calmness that rested in July was palpable. You could almost feel it.
That feels hopeful for me. Mm-hmm. I sometimes worry about the anxiety that might be created in children with fear of, especially for girls that are growing up and trying to navigate, how do I express my body and my body in relation to others and touch? And now I'm not allowed to be near someone else or touch them, or I have to wear masks and I can no longer see their facial expressions. But it sounds like what you're hearing is actually a deepening in connection with those that are closest to them and that inner nuclear circle.
Yes. And I feel like, that's the initial. That's like phase one. Now, if this is to continue and we're talking about another year of this, we are going to start to see some challenges and stress and anxiety rising in our kids because they are socially wired. They are trying to figure themselves out in contact with other people. So it will be interesting to have you ask me that question in another 6 months. Okay.
Okay, we'll do another interview in 6 months. Okay. Can you just tell us a little bit about the work that you do? Give some more specifics. Obviously I said a little bit in your description and it's written up above, but you've been doing this for a long time. And so when you try to kind of explain what it is that you do to help girls and boys, but right now we're talking about girls and their mothers in trying to figure out how to navigate that relationship, how do you describe what you do?
Well, it also can kind of depend on who I'm talking to, how I describe it. But overall, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to normalize the sexual development of youth as they're leaving childhood and going into adolescence. And while I'm doing that, I'm educating the child. I'm normalizing developmental stuff that, whether their parents have spoken to them about it or not, desensitizing them to body parts and smells and blood and all those kinds of things, to be playful with it, to bring it to them in some way where they can see the experience that's coming and go, oh, that's okay. That crazy lady told me this was going to happen and brown was going to be the first thing I was going to see and I'm not dying and, all those things. And to bring a playful aspect of it together and to have the beauty of it is having the group of girls together so that, maybe 4 or 5 classes in, one girl who has maybe started menstruating says, well, this is what I do. And everybody stops. And, it's like, those sweet moments of of their community around a time that can be really scary. I mean, they're trying to re-identify with a body that's changing, and in a society that has a lot of judgment around what that body should be like. So I'm trying to help them feel comfortable and normalize change. And at the same time, I'm trying to educate the parents around that. I had no idea that that was going to be part of what this business was going to be when I started it over 2 decades ago. I was so sure it was really going to be primarily focused around the youth. But it became more and more apparent with every parent meeting that I was having, the need for parent education to help parents normalize this experience, because the last time they went through puberty was when they went through it. I mean, they don't have a bearing on what that experience is like currently. And so to give them the correct information, resources, coaching them, doing one-on-ones. So many of them, they don't need therapists. They just need another person to talk to and ask questions of and bounce ideas off with. And the biggest question I get is this normal? They want to know if their kid's normal, and is this okay? And should it last this long or this long? And so being that support was shocking to me. I didn't realize that was going to be something that was a part of my business. So those are really the 2 things that I focus on, are the youth, normalizing puberty, and parents educating and normalizing it as well.
So powerful. And I've done one-on-one time with Karen, and it's so enlightening. And just to go, how do we navigate thresholds of normal? Because I don't know about you, but I talk to women and mothers who've grown up with either, I had early sexual abuse, or a real, what felt like maybe a hypersexual upbringing, or on the flip side, really conservative parents where we weren't allowed to talk about it. We weren't allowed to see it. I never saw my parents touch. I mean, there's these extremes, and now we're going, how do I help my child navigate her experience of it in today's world in what feels like the most uplifting way? And so I have moms reach out to me saying, okay, how do I have these conversations with my daughter about her menstrual cycle, and that her menses is real haphazard. She's not having normal menstrual cycles. And when is it appropriate to bring up tampons versus cups and all of that stuff? I imagine, Karen, that those conversations come up very easily for you.
Yes, they absolutely do. And sometimes it's even, I'm having to put the brakes on for some of the mamas, because they're so excited, and, they want them this and and the girls are just like, hey. So it's really in those moments, probably the best thing I could offer you. And this also goes around conversations around sex and sexuality, is to really get off of your message and what it is that you think they need to hear, and go to where they are. What are they asking? What are they needing right in that moment? Again, whether it's having to do with menstruation or buying a bra or dating and questions about sex, it's like for parents to stop as soon as they do get a question or an inquiry or a paused look or something after what you've said, and think in that moment, what does she want right now, really? Because I've been also listening to kids for over 2 decades. And boy, howdy, do they have a few things that they tell me about their relationship with their moms that don't work. And a lot of it is too much information, too long of a conversation, definitely not being able to notice when the youth is done, being able to take in the information. And the biggest one is sometimes I just want her to listen. I actually don't need a lecture or advice, or, I'm okay with the awkward silences. I just want her to listen. And so navigating what their needs are in that moment is absolutely one of the best ways that you can connect with your daughter. Keeping it short, sweet, maybe not face-to-face. Some kids are freaked out by face-to-face, particularly our more kinesthetic, active kids. It's shoulder-to-shoulder conversations while we're doing things, and really putting your message and your needs around what you're trying to communicate to her away, and look at what is actually rising for her in that moment and address that, and then stop.
Powerful.
hard,
Yeah.
hard.
Well, and we are in our own context of our own stories that we're telling ourselves and uncomfortable and trying to navigate.
Yeah.
Sounds like less is more. What about, I've heard about the mother-daughter project. I don't know a whole lot about it, but this idea of giving our daughters other aunties and other female adults to reach out to if maybe they're not ready to reach out to their own mother. Is that kind of what you do, or do you have any suggestions around that?
Yeah, if you go back and you think about this whole setup that we humans started out with, was we were in a tribal system. And so we had community. That community was not just a living and breathing and eating and surviving community. It was a parenting community as well. Particularly in the United States, we have drifted far away from this concept of community parenting because of our level of independence. And, we can do it all. We should do it all ourselves. And unfortunately, that is isolating us, setting us up for isolation. When youth are transitioning from childhood to puberty, they need other adults. Absolutely. Studies have been done on the quality of mother's voice decreasing. And literally, she has a hard time hearing what you're saying. The decibels are off. And that is an intuitive call to hear other voices. And those other voices can be other aunties. They can be, actual aunties. On occasion, their grandmothers. If there are other parenting partners involved, dads, well, their decibel levels, they can hear dad. This is actually a time where having that partner, if you have a dad in life, is an opportunity for mom to pull back a little bit during the onset of puberty and adolescence and let dad step in, because he tends to listen really well. He tends to not talk a whole lot. And he tends to just be there, which is what they really need. So, I think we need aunties. I think we need a village around our kids. Again, developmentally, parents in a tribal system were kind of done parenting at the onset of puberty and adolescence, and the aunties and the uncles and the grandfathers and everybody took over, and they literally moved out of their hut or whatever structure it was that they were living in into others. Right? Ooh.
Fascinating. Well, and I forget, because I lived in Hawaii for 8 years. And so when I say auntie, it's any female adult. And I forget in another context. And when you talk about the voice of the dad, my husband can come home and he'll say something one time and somehow I hear it. And I go, how is it that I have said that same thing 3, 4, 5 times and there's no
wah. At some point it just gets shut out. And so, and not to take it personally. That's another thing, is that mamas tend to take it very personally when their kids start to disconnect from them, which they're wired to do, by the way. They're wired to disconnect from us and to find their other tribe. They're looking around, where else am I going to survive? Yeah, dad walks in the door and so in those moments, it's so valuable to lean into that positive connection and not take it personally and say, phew, wonderful. She actually went and did what he said. Really, if there are fathers that are actively involved in the parenting relationship, that is a time to really lean into that. And it'll make the papas feel really good too.
Okay. So sounds like particularly right into puberty.
Yes.
Okay. What about for the moms who are saying, my daughters are starting to feel really rebellious. It's like they're pulling away from me. All they want to do is be on their phone. I feel like my daughter doesn't even like me anymore. Do you have any suggestions to the moms that are experiencing that?
Right. Well, first of all, know that no matter what, you are her primary connection. You are the number one still, even though she may be sitting on your phone. Some of you might have heard this before, but I'm actually going to say you, my dear, I just spoke about this, but we can be dripping with connection with expectation around connection with our daughters. And their idea of connection is changing. Our idea isn't. So typically what happens is when we start to feel that disconnect happening, we go in hard. And we're like, okay, let's, we got to pull this together here. I don't feel connected to you. And, we start talking about it or whatever. And she's like, whatever, mom, and that even fuels us a little bit further. And then we feel even farther disconnect in the disconnect. And that fuels fear of disconnect. And parenting from a place of fear, we kind of know is not so great. And it brings up our fears, our feelings of disconnect, maybe when we were in the parent-child relationship. And so when that feeling of disconnect shows up for mom, whatever it is, with the phone in her hand, or that she hasn't said anything in the car over the last 3 hours of driving together, is to acknowledge, first of all, I feel disconnected. And just for you to know that, you don't have to say it to her, because she'll probably roll her eyes and go, yeah, well, that's whatever. But for you to acknowledge, I feel disconnected right now. And then to think of, in this moment, how am I connected to her? I mean, like, so simply, like, she's sitting right there. She's actually sitting next to me in the room doing something. That's connection for her. Not my kind, but she's with me right now. To try and acknowledge those little tiny moments where the connection is taking place, to set up actual one-on-one time, doing stuff that she wants to do in her world. You don't like to go shopping. She loves to go shopping. Take her shopping. You don't have to do it every day, but just every once in a while, take her shopping. So it's like, how can we connect with them on their level for a period of time? I'm not saying this is the way life is going to be forever, but when they're changing, when they're pulling back, is a time for us to consider, how can we connect with her on her level, rather than the stories that we tell ourselves about the kind of connection that we want. And that's something we have to figure out. You can't ask them, so how would you like to connect with me today? They'll be like, no. But that's our detective work, is to figure out, oh, I'm feeling connected right now. How can I make that happen more? I'm braiding her hair. I'm going to feel that connection right now. I'm going to take it where I can get it. And then realize I get to hold that connection and wait for when the next time can happen.
Mm-hmm. I love what you had said around acknowledging that it's almost like we live in different galaxies. Mm-hmm. And rather than trying to pull her into mine, how can I become more familiar and get to know what her galaxy is? And can I enter into hers?
Even if you feel uncomfortable, like, if it's not your love language, it's not who you are, the fact that, she knows, they know when you do it. They tell me, they say, oh, you know what my mom did today? She never, ever lets me have sugar. She baked me a red velvet cake. And the girl is just completely shocked, because it's something that mom would never do. Wow, did we hop into a different galaxy there? Yeah, that girl talked about that red velvet cake for weeks.
Because it was her love language and but what was important and how she defined love.
Yes.
Fascinating. I'm wondering if you would talk a little bit about the big social media. We've got Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. I don't even know all the, what's that other one where you only have 60 seconds? I can't remember.
Snapchat.
Yeah, whatever it is. How do parents, when is it too much? How do we give our daughters freedom to be daughters during this era, while also still protecting their innocence and doing what feels comfortable? Do you have any suggestions for mothers that are navigating that piece?
Right. Well, the biggest thing is there's no blanket one thing that you should do. It is so individual, really, to each child in their development, to their history. Is there addiction in the family? There's so many individual things to be considered around if a girl should have social media or not, or how much time they should be on the phone, their responses to screen time. It's almost like food in a way, And so, of course, there's some basic safety things that I think are really, really important. But the truth is technology is here. It's not going away. It's a language that our kids are going to be very well versed in, a community, a world, web, literally, that they're going to have to learn to navigate. Developmentally, for the most part, there's a few kids who, I feel can handle it. For the most part, they can't handle it on their own. Developmentally, they're not wired to do that yet. So if there's technology in the home, it needs to be managed. And it takes a lot of time and energy. And it's not just about, oh, here are our cyber values. We're just going to put them right here. And I expect you to follow them. It doesn't work that way. They see them, they understand them, and then developmentally they can get caught up in worlds that are way more mature for them than they can handle. Like, again, it's a small bit of the population that can handle that. But for the most part, 12 group texts, TikTok, social media of, where they're having to make decisions around themselves and what they post and hitting send, stuff like that. For the most part, they have a really hard time with that. And so management, what does that look like? It looks like no technology in bedrooms. I'm a big fan of that. I feel like they need to have they need privacy. And especially when they're going through puberty and body changes, they need to close the door. They need to lock their door. They need to shut the world out, including parents, and to be able to be in their room and lay on the bed and look at the ceiling and try to figure out who they are and what's going on. Technology does not belong in that world. So in order for parents to be able to trust their kids in their rooms with their doors closed to get the developmental need of privacy met, I believe there should be no technology in bedrooms. Another thing is, I have so many moms who go through their kids' texts and are looking for the world showing up or their kids showing up in ways that are not appropriate. Very stressful for parents, very stressful on the parent-child relationship as well. You should not be going through your kids' journals and reading those. We shouldn't be reading their texts either. If you're worried about the safety of your child, get something called bark.us, which is a monitoring system that will flag you if there is questionable language or pictures coming in or out. That way, parents can, if their children do have cell phones, they can rest a little bit without having to go through this to find out what they're up to. Because most of the stuff that they're up to, you don't even want to read it. I mean, it's like, what are they talking about? Or, there's a social thing happening or whatever. And suddenly we're in our kids' world, and it's like, no, don't. We're worried about, their safety. What are the bottom line things that you're concerned about? Managing screen time. Absolutely. You need to manage it. Some kids can manage it themselves, but for the most part, when I ask them, do you know when you've been on the screen too long? They're like, yeah, sometimes I get a little headache. Sometimes I'm hungry. I get irritable. And then I say, so do you like it when your parents come in and tell you when it's time to get off? Do I like it? No, I hate it. Do I need it? Yes. Yes, I do. Right. And they say that, that gesture of, I don't want you to tell me when to get off. It's like, thank you. I was actually really tired and I needed to go outside and get some fresh air. So parents need to manage if they're going to have technology. That's really the biggest thing and regular conversation, TikTok Tuesdays, get on, just dropped her name, Delaney, for Screenagers. She's got great stuff, screenagers.com, on how to keep conversation around technology alive in your home. If you have technology in your home, you need to talk about it and not just assume that everybody's doing okay with it. It's like, so a weekly check-in. How'd tech go for you guys today? Anything show up that was kind of weird? Or how would you handle this situation? And just have it be a normal conversation as you would with, managing other stuff in life.
So I'm hearing screenagers.com and
yes.
Bark. What was the other Bark?
Yeah, BARK.us. It is a service.
Yeah.
It is something you pay for, but it is not hackable.
Yeah.
Which is important. Another thing too, in terms of what kind of social media to have or to not have, check in on commonsensemedia.org. And that is a clearinghouse of movies, video games, apps that have been reviewed by specialists for developmental appropriateness, age level, things like that. Really great for parents to be able to go, I just checked it out and that's way more than we're going to be doing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, being an educated parent is huge. Being a media educated parent is huge. Mm-hmm. And so places like Screenagers and Common Sense Media can really help educate parents, because there's a whole world, as you can imagine, around social media that kids are navigating underground. And they tell me all the time, they're like, my parents, no, they don't know nothing. They tell me ask me how to turn off their phone.
Right.
So it's like, if you're going to have technology in your home, if you're going to have drugs and alcohol in your home, you need to manage it and to be educated about it so you can talk about it.
I'm aware of time and we're starting to wind down. I want to talk a little bit about gender fluidity, and also if there's anything else, Karen, that you want to add. There's groups for girls, you do some work with boys, and then it sounds like it's also based on how a child is currently identifying. Do you have any suggestions for parents who are watching their daughter or son express more gender fluidity, and how we as parents can support what that looks like moving forward?
Well, this experience of becoming, which is what I call it when you're leaving childhood and stepping into adolescence, is this period of time of sexual development where there are body changes that are taking place. There's penile growth, there's menstruation, there's breast development, there's all kinds of stuff that really emphasizes gender in kids that was easier to maybe not notice as much all through childhood. It's a really natural time for humans, and I believe we've been doing this forever, but I think it's a little bit more socially acceptable right now for us to do this. I mean, we're still trying to get a grasp around it for adults, but for those communities that are potentially a little bit more progressive and are okay with their children exploring their gender identity, is to allow, honestly, to acknowledge and allow. It's important that our kids get to explore themselves in the safest place they have, which is their home. And for parents to not jump to conclusions around kids' gender identity and to feel like we need to label it. We're humans are labelers. We label looks, we label everything, because labeling gives us some sense of bearing of, well, how do I relate to that label myself? If I can't label it, then I can't relate to it. So parents very quickly want to label, tend to, not all, tend to label what is happening for their child. Oh my gosh, I think she might be bi. She's got a crush on a girl. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, but it's okay. Let her be that. Tell me more about that. What kind of feelings do you? That's when we get curious. Any kind of parenting thing that shows up with kids around gender, around sexuality, around body changes. A child brings you something, you stop and you get curious. You go, really? Tell me more. That should be the very first thing that you say in any situation. Tell me more. Tell me more. That's what she's going to hear when she comes to you. Instead of, let me tell you. Let me tell you. So get curious unemotionally. She's just told you that, gosh, I'd have a crush on a girl and I don't know. And then you just get quiet for a minute and you meet her right where she is and go, yeah, interesting, huh? Tell me more about that. What else? And that creates that environment of connection, of openness. She doesn't feel you showing up with a huge agenda, and it allows her to explore what she's feeling, because who knows what it's going to be. I mean, there's so much change in becoming. We just have to allow the becoming, of course, maintain their physical, emotional, and mental safety, but not get to latch on to something that they are experiencing in their becoming. And gender identity is really, and expression is really, can be some of the first things that can show up for sure.
Fascinating. It makes me think of something, and this is way off of the age group that you work with, but in regard to becoming, I work a lot with women, particularly in the perimenopause and menopause chapter. And I have this analogy of the time when a woman is going into the chrysalis and becoming goo and kind of redefining, who am I going to be? What butterfly is going to come out of this chrysalis as I then birth into, now I'm in menopause and I'm the crone in a community. I'm wondering if you've seen any trend, this isn't who you work with, so I don't even know, but have you seen any trend in kind of a round two of becoming as women are transitioning through the perimenopause and into menopause chapter and expressing themselves in very new ways, even sexually and within gender and how they relate to, I think we become so much more unapologetic and fierce. And do you have anything to say about that?
Oh, yeah. I see it all the time, because those are the women who have adolescent daughters. for the most part, I mean, some of the daughters are a little bit older that I work with, and so the moms are a little bit younger. And I mean, it's, they're all becoming, which is messy, by the way. Can I just say that we got this thing happening over here, and we got this thing happening over here, and that's a whole other conversation. But absolutely, I see mothers. It's actually very empowering for the girls to see that. It's a little unsettling, but for the most part, they like it, because they're embarrassed by you at a certain point. What you wear, your hair, everything is like, oh, that's rough, Mom. But when they see you changing and you stepping into a new aspect of yourself, it gives them that permission to do the same thing too. Now, should we both be wearing black lipstick at the same time? Probably not. The becoming is going to be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a beautiful moment, actually, for both of them to be doing it at the same time. It can be messy, but it's also beautiful, like where you're walking out in something new and she goes, whoa, Mom, that is a little bit racy. I can't work, They love that. They love it. They love watching us change, actually, because it gives them permission.
So fascinating. Well, I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else that you feel like is incomplete that you want to add to the people who are listening to? There might be mothers, aunties, grandmothers, fathers, maybe people who are not parents yet and might become parents at some point. Anything else that you would like to add?
Oh, wow. There's so much. But I think really I have to just bring it to this time that we're in right now with COVID and the world, that at the same time that we don't want to smother our kids, don't underestimate the power of family right now. And at the same time, realize the definition of family is different. To you, family might mean going out on a picnic together or going to the movies, and all of those things are shut down now. And to redefine what a family moment can look like. A family moment can look like everybody in their bedroom with the door closed. And that's okay. For us to shift kind of our expectations around connection during this time and to allow everybody to be, which we are, and to some varying degree, in crisis, but to know that the family can adjust and that there's room for people to explode, implode, and repair. The rupture and repair stuff has to happen faster. You have to let go of things, not take things personally. And to just redefine that family bubble for everybody and to create more allowance. That's probably the big thing.
Awesome. Thank you again, Karen. I just really honor what you do in the world and all the families that you've impacted, which then is raising the next generation of parents that will do an even better job with their children.
That's my plan.
Yes. If you want more, you can see her website in the description, Body Basics and Beyond. Go there. You can reach out to her, ask for one-on-one time, ask for group time, whatever it may be. Maybe it's just that you want someone for your daughter to talk to, and the two of you as a parent and daughter. I mean, whatever it may be, I think that Karen is an awesome online resource, no matter where you are in the world.
Thank you for being there. We need these communities more than ever.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you for listening to the Woman's Vibrancy Code. Connect with us and take the first step to transforming your energy, hormones, and libido at thewomansvibrancycode.com. Cheers to your zest and vitality. Make sure to follow for weekly power-packed value.